A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, I had the opportunity to sit down with the young and hardworking duo behind JMS Built, Josh and Jesse. These guys are a hardworking team of carpenters who get around Melbourne providing exceptional carpentry and building services, working on some amazing projects in Melbourne. I love chatting to these guys, especially hearing from another generation of guys coming up through the ranks. And it was a true pleasure to see how these guys have set themselves apart in providing a leading edge suite of services for the residential and commercial projects. So let's get into it. Josh and Jesse from JMS Built in Melbourne, welcome to Build Hatch.
How's it going? Thanks for having us.
That's all right. Now, really looking forward to this one. I love hearing from particularly the younger generation of carpenters working in the industry, and it's always good to get that sort of different perspective. So like all, I guess, we always like to take it back to the very beginning. So were you guys always seeking to get into construction from when you were younger?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I was always doing stuff around the house with my old man and kind of always just enjoyed being the hands-on outdoors. You know, starting high school and all that, that was always a career path that I wanted to go down. It changed a bit over the years, but then pretty much when I finished year 12, it was like, I got to be outside. And so it was looking around, trying to find an apprenticeship and landed on carpentry.
And what about you, Josh?
No, I was the complete opposite. I had my heart set on racing motorbikes in Europe for the time that I was young. And then, basically finished year 12 and it didn't quite work out the way we had it planned. So I basically stumbled across a carpentry apprenticeship. I knew I was never going to sit in an office or anything like that. I was always sort of hands-on growing up. I basically stumbled across a carpentry apprenticeship and then fell in love with it and just went with it from there.
Now, your business is called JMS Built. So how did you guys meet? Were you friends? Did you grow up together? How did that work?
We became friends through friends of friends, really. So we both knew a bloke that was friends with each of us from knowing us in different ways. And then we just really pretty much hit it off better than anyone else in the friendship group. And so we've only been friends for the last probably like 4 or 5 years, if that.
Not even. It's kind of like, it's actually quite funny. When we first met, Jesse didn't even like me. So it was just, it's pretty funny when you think back and then now you fast forward a few years and we've got a business and I talk to him more than I talk to my missus. So it's it's good how it turns around.
All right. So take us back a little bit. Were you both working in similar aspects of carpentry?
No, we weren't. We're in sort of two totally different worlds. So I was, throughout my whole apprenticeship, I did sort of high-end renovations, extensions throughout Melbourne. And so it was all very take your time, millimeter perfect quite stuff, like high-end $1 million renovations, which was great. And then Jesse was more out in the burbs, as we call it, just knocking up houses for the mass builders.
Yeah, well, they are completely different. And I guess you could say they complement each other very well.
It complements it now when we can come together and sort of have the best of both worlds, have the knowledge of both, so we can sort of, make sure that we're getting the best quality product that we can.
Now, there'll be a lot of young guys listening to this who are sort of sitting back thinking, when do I take the plunge? How do I take the plunge? And what sort of tools do you put into place to be able to make that step? So was it a conversation just to kickstart it? Like, how did it happen?
It was actually a night at the pub. Yeah, funnily enough. We were just talking and it turned on to I was maybe 6 months from finishing my apprenticeship and Jesse was probably 12 months, something like that, from finishing his apprenticeship. And we just kind of, it clicked to us. Oh, hang on a minute here. Like, I don't want to,
joke.
I don't want to do it by myself. And it was a bit of a joke. Like, you go to the bar and put on the business card. And then all of a sudden we kind of, by the end of the night, it was like, all right, sweet. In 6 months or 12 months, we'll have a business together. And it's pretty much how it turned out.
Were you sort of thinking about like getting the work? Did you have some contacts in place?
Well, lucky enough that, again, we sort of had the quality of work throughout my apprenticeship and a couple of contacts through myself, and same with Jesse, that we could get on board with a couple of different supervisors and builders to get us the work. Once we sort of had about a month's worth of work guaranteed lined up, we made sure that we could at least pay the bills for a month, and then we just gave our 2 weeks notice, and we just threw ourselves in head first.
So how much work did you have lined up in that first sort of beginning stage?
We only had, obviously, it was through one builder that we started off with, and it was just knocking up it was from full job. So frame, fit off, frame, lock up, fix, and fit off. And it was pretty much just, here's your first one. When you finish that, you can go on to the next one if you want. And so we just thought, all right, we'll just go one by one, see how we go. And yeah, so it's just, you finish that job, next week on to the next one. Just keep doing it like that. And
just keeps rolling.
Yeah. And at first we're like, oh yeah, this is great, because, it's just, there's the next, just keep going. And like at that point, it wasn't so much hunting for the work, because the next one was just there ready for us to go.
We were pretty lucky in the fact that it was like a retirement village down in Geelong. So I think they had like 250 units or something in the whole complex, and we were coming in at like number 170 or 160 or something. So we knew there was a good sort of 12 months worth of work there ahead of us if that's where we wanted to stay. It's definitely not where we wanted to stay and not the direction we wanted the business to go in, but it was guaranteed work essentially for the first 6 to 12 months of the business. So it was just like, all right, let's just crack on and make some money.
I like that approach, because it's kind of like, all that type of project in construction can be a very much low margin, high turnover business. So it's really good that you had the foresight to, I guess, look at the volume and the repetitive work in front of you, particularly early on in your career, which is very fortunate as well. So,
well, all the work was all purchase order work. So, you're not quoting anything. It's just, the frame and lock up's going to be, your 8K or 9K, whatever it is. And then your fix is going to be this, and your fit off is going to be that. And it's just like, well, you kind of work out your own systems in yourself that you minimize the amount of time you do on every job down to, we could almost work out in hours how many hours it would take us to do each house. And at the end of the day, the quicker you can do it, the more money you're going to make. So it was good because we could put in processes into the business early to really work out how long each sort of job will take us.
You mentioned purchase orders. So there'll be a lot of people listening to this who don't understand what that means, because traditionally in, I guess, custom architectural build businesses, they may not have that model. It's a fixed price, and whatever it costs is whatever it costs. But the purchase order model is more about higher volume build. So they actually come to you and tell you what that purchase order amount is, don't they?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's it's terrible. Yeah, I'm glad that we don't do a lot of that work anymore per se. But when you're first starting out, you're kind of restricted with what you can do. So you've just got to take what you can get. And
it was good to start with.
Yeah,
because like you kind of, at the end of the day, you knew what you were getting each week.
Yeah. So like, take us through how that works. So that, say they give you a purchase order for fit off. What does that look like?
We basically just had, your fit off price. So say if it's $1,500 for your fit off. And then once you finish that fit off, you send the invoice in, send that purchase order attached with the invoice. And then you get paid within 14 days from the time that you send it in. So it's very, like you said, it's very, low margin, high volume areas, because, they're not paying the greatest rates. So, they're going to try and squeeze everything they can, because they're producing, 40 houses a month.
Yeah, that's right. So effectively the builders already quoted or priced this into their own business.
Yeah.
And they're basically coming to you and saying, here's a purchase order, which is effectively just a fancy word for a number or a code.
Yeah.
And then basically that code or number says, all right, so your purchase order number is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's $1,500 for fit off, or it might be $8,000 for frames and trusses.
Yeah.
And so there's no, I think it's worth 10, or, you can say all you like, but usually it's a case of, well,
the first couple of ones that we did, it opened our eyes to, this is, there's no variations in here. There's no talking about pricing, or extras are, cutthroat to just get one extra put through, no matter how annoying. Or, we had some of the girder trusses that they were lifting up were like 180 kilos, because they're 13, 14 meters long, or with LVLs, and it'd get dropped at the other side of the site, and you couldn't even get an extra, because you got to have two people carry it, 100 meters, 200 meters down the road to get it into the house, and they wouldn't pay extras for that and stuff. But, it's all learning experience, and we implement that now to our jobs, so that, now we make sure that what's the access like on site? What's this like on site? So that way we don't make the same mistakes that sort of we get caught up in before.
Yeah, there's no real magic formula for knowing about those experiences in advance, is there? You just have to kind of live and breathe it yourself.
You just got to cop it on the chin.
Yeah, look, it's a great attitude to have. Now, you guys are well known for effectively being a carpentry sort of sprint crew, this sort of high end contract workforce model for builders. So, how did you sort of morph into that and get a name for yourself in that sort of part of the business?
We pretty much took, like, obviously Josh's experience from his apprenticeship and doing his work with his old boss of the high end stuff. So you've got that high end detail, the architectural plans, and then combined it with the speed that I was taught as an apprentice, and been able to combine those two together, that you actually do get a real good finish. Because Josh has been reading those plans, you get full architectural. It's a lot different to your mass build stuff. And you just be able to bring those two together to create almost a hybrid of carpentry.
I think it's sort of forgotten as well between, you have your chippies that are subcontracting to builders on the high end stuff, and then you have your chippies that are still working for their first boss or their second boss on the mass frames, pumping out frames. There's kind of no in between. And that's where I think we're great, because we come in between. We're not going to knock out your frame in 3 days like they might do in the suburbs. It might take us, 6 or 7, but it'll be of the quality of the ones that are going to take, the high end stuff. So we're kind of that happy medium between two.
Yeah, it's very important. And I think that can be that danger model of the purchase order model that we we're talking about previously, because what that does is that incentivizes speed, but not necessarily quality.
It definitely doesn't incentivize quality, that's for sure.
That's right. Whereas it's like you said, seeing a gap in the market and thinking, well, how can we combine this dynamic and our previous business model and morphing that DNA into something that's particularly, at the time of recording this in 2022, there's margins being squeezed, there's prices being squeezed. So it is very much about coming up with a leadership model and leading by getting yourself out there and say, well, we have done this type of work before, but we want to do the high end work. And kudos for you guys for having that mature outlook. There'll be people listening to this who think, well, this is great. We've been able to see how you guys have taken this model and you've gone out on your own, and particularly very fortunate doing it so close to finishing your apprenticeship. I hear a lot of challenges from guys who's saying, how do I find the time to quote jobs and things like that? So how do you sort of juggle that pressure?
Quite early on, when we first started quoting jobs and getting to that aspect, it was a bit of Jesse and I had to build trust within each other, so that, we know that if Jesse's quoting a job, I know that, he knows what he's doing, and vice versa toward me. And that took a fair while for us to work out our own systems within each other. Like, we made plenty of mistakes at the start, but now I think we've got a pretty good system in place. And now it's kind of like, all right, we've got enough work on now that sort of one of us takes the step back and one of us does more of the bookkeeping, quoting and stuff like that, while another one's overlooking the boys on site and running more things on site. But at the start, it was just a lot of late nights quoting together and ordering pizza. It was, but I think you got to experience that. Otherwise, you never know what's going to happen. Otherwise, you stick in the same rut of doing purchase order work and you never evolve.
Yeah, look, it's a hard juggle to do, to be able to take yourself away from the business, particularly when you're quoting man hours involved in that job. So effectively, it's that friction of taking yourself out of that production plant, if you like.
Yeah.
And then going outside of the business a little bit to try and bring more work in and spending some time quoting that.
I found it a lot harder. I'm finding a lot harder making sure that, even if, say, I come in late, or not late, I'm doing office work in the morning when the boys get there, then go to site, that it's like, shit, I don't want the boys, Jesse, to think that I'm piss farting around in the office and just, kicking back. It's like, got to make sure that everything you're doing is for the business. There's a lot of people out there that get distracted in, the boys are on site making me money, I can kick back and go out for coffee or go to get lunch or something like that. Whereas you can't. Like, you've got to be on top of it and you've got to have your finger on the pulse no matter where you are in the business.
Are you guys similar personalities, or, you're obviously mates first and then you obviously have your business relationship as well, but how do you juggle different roles and responsibilities within your business?
Well, we pretty much went and worked out between ourselves all right, who's going to be better suited for what? And so through doing personality tests, it pretty much found out that I'm better off being on site with the boys, kind of keeping them in line, telling them what to do. That's more suited to my personality of, being there with them.
So how did you know to get to do a personality test?
We're actually lucky enough that we have a really good business mentor that we got onto pretty early in our business. Yeah, we put a lot of faith into him, and he basically told us, both being on site, is got to work out a sort of role within the business, a role with each other. And yeah, we did personality tests online, and yeah, it just worked out that I was more suited sort of organizing clients, talking to builders, talking to suppliers, talking to trades, supervisors, everyone on that side of things, whereas Jesse is more of the hard ass boys, pull your socks up, get the ball rolling. So we need to get this job over the line.
We got deadlines, boys. We got to keep going.
What were the names of your personality types?
Mine came back as Commander. I'm pretty sure it was Commander.
The Commander. It sounds like, Josh, you would have been the CEO.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think it was director.
It was director or something like that. Yeah,
it was director. Yeah.
And were you surprised when you got to sort of do that exercise?
No, not really. You're a bit soft on the boys.
Yeah, I think we knew it. I'm always a bit of a pushover with the boys. Whereas Jesse's like, no, you'll get this done now. You'll go sweep the floors now. But no, it kind of didn't come as a surprise, but it was good to have it in front of us from sort of a third party to say, okay, these are your two roles, and just go with it.
Now, what are your sort of favorite type of projects that you're really enjoying working on at the moment?
My favorite is, I'm coming from the apprenticeship, is the framing. So like when we're doing those architectural frames, that for me is just like, that's the best part of the job, because you're going in, you're looking at these plans, you get the curved walls, the 3.5 meter tall walls, all that kind of stuff integrated with steel. And so like those kind of jobs for me, just to get in, and you're starting with a bare slab, and when you walk away at the end of the week or 2 weeks, whatever, you've got a house framed up. And so that's definitely the most enjoyable part of it for me.
It's probably the quickest amount of progress you see on site, isn't it, in a short period of time?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm pretty well the same, I think, the framing part of it. Although Jesse is a much better framer and faster framer than what I am, I do enjoy getting out on the frames as well. But I think the finished product of the work is what I like. Like you walk into for example, a bathroom renovation, and you walk in, it's some bathroom from the 80s or the 70s, and it looks very dated. And then, we walk out 9-10 weeks later, whatever it is, and it looks like this ultra modern, awesome, bathroom that grandma and grandpa love and enjoy. And I think that's the best bit for me, is seeing the transformation from the old to new.
I was saying earlier, you're well known as being this Sprint Carpentry crew, if you like, and working productively in and around Melbourne. So what are, I guess, some of the key characteristics of you guys, and how you've been able to develop that brand and name for yourselves?
I think a major thing for me from my apprenticeship as well was having a really good company morale and company policies in place. Throughout my apprenticeship, the morale wasn't exactly the greatest sort of on site between a lot of the workers. For me, that was like the culture of the business was the number one priority. As much as, probably should be making money and whatnot, it's sort of the culture of the boys and who we hire was the number one priority, because you want someone that everyone's going to get along with, and, you have your bad days. But I think that reflects well of us on site and reflects in our work as well, because no one really has any arguments or disagreements, or, no one cracks the shits on site. Because at the end of the day, everyone walking past, that you're walking advertisement for your business. So if your boys are yelling and swearing and carrying on and throwing guns around, well, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look good on us. So that was the main one for me. So I think that's what reflects well in our work.
The key driver in your business and what you guys do is, I guess, very thorough planning, isn't it? So
yeah,
like being thrown out, particularly in the current times, when if something's not delivered on site, or you get a phone call today and say, listen, Josh and Jesse, tomorrow's not going to work out, we haven't had something delivered for you. How does that throw you out?
It's definitely like, we'll go through at the start of the week, and you plan your 2 weeks ahead of you and what you've got, and you find almost every day we're reshuffling that calendar. So it's almost kind of, as long as we've always got that next job that we can go on to, that's ready for us to bring forward that day, it works out. There's always some times where there is no other job to go on to. But it's definitely, like constantly reshuffling of the calendar, which has just become a part of it now where, like Josh mentioned earlier, one of us is in the office, for an extra half hour, an hour in the morning, just making sure that what we've got planned for the next day, calling to confirm deliveries, calling to confirm for scaffold, whatever it might be, is actually good for us to start that job. Because the sooner we can get on to rearranging, the easier it is for us to actually handle.
It's almost planning on foot, isn't it, to some degree?
Definitely.
It's on an hourly basis almost sometimes. Like I think, the last week we had a call, 3 different calls from the same supervisor about 3 different times that trusses are getting delivered. It's just part of it. Like, and then 2 plank gets pushed back and then scaffold gets pushed back. And it's just like, all right, well, it's just hour by hour basis of what's getting delivered and what's coming when. And then that's if the crane does rock up to lift the steel or lift the sheet floor, if they don't get held up or in a car accident on the way and they're all of a sudden delayed for an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, there were people that was their job. They had a full-time role, and that was part of the contract administrator's role or the estimator's role, and that they were constantly using Microsoft Project and planning and sequencing and, the critical path analysis and all these critical stages. And nowadays it's like, for the best part, unless it's a huge commercial, complicated project, a lot of the guys I talk to, it's very much that. By the time you plan something, you just constantly got to adapt. And it's more about the communication aspect rather than anything else.
Yeah, I found that's massive between Jesse and I lately as well. It's the supervisor might only say I might be the point of contact for the supervisor, but if Jesse's the one on site, he's the one that actually has to know that this has been pushed out or this has been brought forward. So the communication between everyone is just absolute key. And if you don't have the communication down, then you're in a world of trouble.
The variety of materials and cladding and things like that are on the market right now, that they're forever changing. So how do you juggle that aspect of working with new products and materials and incorporating that into your quoted work?
Well, one thing that really benefits us, which we went to one a couple of weeks ago, is when cladding companies put on demo days. And so actually going and learning the product first and, their way of installing it, their way of how it needs to go up, cutting, all that kind of stuff, to then come to when it goes to quoting for the job, we already know what needs to be done because we've already had that one-on-one experience with a brand rep on how to put it on. And so it kind of then we have a fair idea on, all right, this is actually going to take us a little bit longer than what we might have thought because we now know the proper way of doing it, which is a huge benefit, those kind of days for us to actually get the experience.
It's also not being afraid to reach out to other people that might have had experience working with it. Like if we don't know, then it's just like, okay, well, we have to get educated. And if we haven't seen something before at one of the demo days or the trade, what are they called? Expos and the Bowens Expos and things like that. If we haven't seen something, but we've seen, oh, hey, hang on. This guy, I saw he installed it on Instagram, a couple of months ago. Let's go back and flick him a message. And all you can do is ask about what the go is and how they installed it. And if, they're willing to help, they're willing to help. But if they're not, then they're not. And you just sort of go for it. But 9 times out of 10, you'll find that people are always sort of willing to help each other.
Yeah, look, that's very important. And I think that's one of the greatest things about our construction industry is you hear some bad stuff, but all in all, most of the time it's very collegiate. And if you are unsure about a particular product, you can ring up someone. They might say, look, I know such and such, he installs it. And we're not even talking about where you might have to go there and work for nothing for him to show you how to use that particular product.
Yeah.
Most guys, I've heard some great stories where people will say, well, look, what's your hourly rate? I'll give me a cost, a cost price, so a minimal hourly rate. I can kind of incorporate you onto the job and, it's not like you're doing a day's work for free, but I'll pay you for your time and you can help us and we'll show you how to use the product because there's so much work out there.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. You find mostly, or we've found mostly, that everyone you talk to, like within the same industry or even, within the same trade, everyone's happy to give each other a hand when they need to. Like it's been quite often that people have reached out to us and say, hey, I need a couple of days work next week. Do you guys have anything free? Like, yeah, for sure. No worries. You can jump on and help us out. And then vice versa. If we dry up and we need our apprentices or us to go somewhere for a couple of days, just because of delays and the way the industry is, then it's reciprocated. So it's actually quite good.
Yeah, 100%. Now, what's on for the future with JMS Built? Where are you guys heading?
Ideally, we'd like to go for our builder's license. We're going to go a few more years of pretty much just growing where we're at the moment, get that more industry-based experience. Yeah, and once we go for our builder's license, it's then taking on the projects for ourselves instead of working underneath another builder.
It's especially hard too because we are younger. A lot of people don't take us as serious as what I think we deserve, realistically. And that's not having an ego. That's just the fact that we know what we can produce. And, so I'm only 24 and Jesse's only 22. So, they say go for your builder's license, and they see a 24-year-old that's, been out of his apprenticeship a couple of years and, he doesn't have the experience. But it's just like, well, we've been running jobs and running bathroom, kitchen, small renovations, even larger scale renovations ourselves for builders that aren't necessarily fully involved in the build themselves. They're sort of leaving it onto us. So it's just sort of building up our reputation a bit for more years so that we can just go for the builder's license and take on the bigger projects in our own name rather than other builders.
I think that's very refreshing to hear, because it's very difficult to have that discipline to be patient. I think a lot of people who are listening to this will get a lot out of that, because the one important and I guess beneficial attribute in construction is there is so much work out there. People appreciate more now than ever that paying people to do good work is a high priority. So just having that maturity and patience to kind of just do the hard yards, get the groundwork done, that time will come. And
Yeah.
like you said, getting yourself out there, getting the reputation, learning from the best so that you can then become the best. That's patience and maturity all in one, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to think that at the moment, the position they're at and the work we do, we are one of the best at what we do. So it's just like, we don't want to move in and jump too far ahead of ourselves and drown. You got to be smart and, make all your steps count.
What's the hardest part of running a construction business?
Cash flow.
Cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow. Definitely, especially at the moment, different builders are being very wary, obviously, with what they're doing and how they're distributing their own funds themselves. So, you've got to make sure you have your buffer there. Otherwise, it can catch up on you pretty quick.
With that, though, there's also, like you mentioned earlier, the on-site stuff of just constant delays, delivery delays, when the trade before you is meant to finish. So you're meant to be going in for a fix, but the plasterers haven't even hung the plaster yet, or whatever it might be. So that's definitely just the calendar, the rearranging the calendar on the constant is definitely one of the challenges.
Yeah, look, I love enlightening people who say are clients and then they're not involved in the construction industry. And we're not talking about a restaurant where it's fragmented in hospitality as well, where you have different suppliers and things like that. But we have different sites.
Yeah.
That restaurant's in the same location and
Yeah.
you're used to using the same delivery guy. Like, there's just so many different parameters in construction that create so many dramas and headaches. So it's just, nothing's ever the same day, is it?
No, I think at one point we actually, talking about travel, we had one job in Sorrento that we were doing for a week or two, and we had another job back close to home, and then we still had a job down in Geelong that we're doing at the same time. And you're driving between all three and trying to manage all three when they're not, if they're within half an hour's drive, it's not so bad. But when you're talking about, 2-3 hours to get to certain jobs, that it starts to get a bit tricky. So those delays become a lot more challenging.
Well, you guys are the Sprint Crew when you're able to catch the Queenscliff ferry from Sorrento over to Geelong.
Yeah, you got to make the most of it.
Yeah, that's true commitment. That is getting the ferry across Port Phillip Bay.
Yeah,
it's a good ferry way.
Yeah,
they give you 45 minutes to relax for a little bit.
The apprentices like it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Well, look, it's been really nice talking to you here in Melbourne. And if they want to get into contact with you and they're looking for a young, dynamic, up and coming Sprint Crew of carpentry workforce, how do they go about it? What's the best way to get into contact with you guys?
The best way is the way of the world at the moment, Instagram and social media and Facebook and whatnot. And then we've also got a website as well. Obviously, our emails and our phone numbers are all linked to that. So if you are looking for any high-class, high-quality work, let us know.
All right. Well, just on that, you mentioned social media. So with your dynamics and your age group, Are people doing TikTok now with construction businesses, or what's the go with that?
I think apprentices are. I think
Yeah, I
apprentices are
think so
jumping on
too.
TikTok at lunchtime and making their own little videos. Us personally, I haven't, or we haven't, but you do see it. I think eventually it's going to. I mean, it's like anything really. All the craves and whatnot eventually trickle into every industry. So I think it's inevitable that it will happen, but I'm not sure I'll be jumping on doing any dances. But yeah,
It doesn't seem to be a serious thing. I don't know, with construction and what you do. Like, you've got a work site. There's obviously the inspired unemployed, and like it's a piss take thing, which is
yeah,
funny and it's amusing, of course, and very entertaining. But I think from an actual business perspective, running a business in construction, depending on what clientele you want, but
yeah.
it's very much about having that seriousness to it as well, I think.
Yeah, it depends on how you want to market your business and the audience that you want. If you want to go and do a couple $1 million renovation to a house in Brighton or Toorak or something like that, and they log online, they see you dancing around trying to flip a bottle on site or whatever it is, I don't think they're going to take you too seriously. So if people want to do it, that's up to them, but that's how they want to market their business. But we'll just stick to making reels of the boys putting frames together or installing vanities or shower cabinets or something like that we know we can get done.
No, well said, and it's always good to hear an interesting perspective. So, all right, well, Josh and Jesse from JMS Built in Melbourne, it's been really nice to sit down and talk to you here in Melbourne. So, thanks again for coming on to Build Hatch.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with Josh and Jesse from JMS Built in Melbourne. Like I said at the start, these guys have a real edge in what they are providing and are well sought after by leading builders in Melbourne. So I encourage you to go check them out. As usual, if you know a hard worker having a go in the construction space or a building related business, person or product where you love what they are doing or selling, then please do get into contact with us and we'll be more than happy to tell their story and get behind their goods or services on the Build Hatch marketplace. Our team are busy rolling out independent sellers on buildhatch.com as we speak. So stay tuned for more and more products and services as they onboarded. As usual, please check out our Instagram page and other socials where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and some of the features of the work that we talk about. Have a great week and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.